Welcome everyone. As you're joining the session today, we're going to give the other attendees a couple more minutes to finish connecting and we'll get started. In the meantime, feel free to let me know via the chat or the Q&A section if you can hear my voice and if you can see my screen. I'll be grateful if you can do so. All right, let's get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Gabriel Sang. I'm TechSHIP specialist here at Techdinamics. And today we have a webinar on International Shipping 101, how to set up your techSHIP environment for international shipping, other required elements that could be involved in that. And well, let's review the program that we have for today. First of all, we're going to take a little bit of time to go through the basic account setup and order information requirements. This would be your starting point when you're shipping international orders, and it's critical that on that particular sense, the elements related to this particular topic are covered, okay? We're also going to take some time to go through duties and customs presets, okay? How to configure who's going to pay for duties, if you're going to pay for duties, or if the customer is going to pay for them, and how to set up the customs information so commercial invoices are properly generated with that information, as well as any electronic trade documents information as well. We're also going to be discussing, since we already mentioned it, how to approach and how to handle paper documents or electronic trade documents. It has a question mark because sometimes you might be wondering, okay, would it be better for me to go through the ETD's side of the aisle or go on a paper trail, right? Printing all the customs invoices, every single international documentation required for shipping instead of transmitting that electronically to the carrier. But we're going to be discussing that as well. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about customs invoices, how you can get those generated, how you can print them, and if you need customizations, how can this happen, okay? So let's take a little bit of time to go through a theory side of all this, and then we'll jump into a TechSHIP environment so we can see this in action. If you have any questions or doubts as we move forward, please feel free to drop any questions or comments in the Q&A section or through the webinar chat, whichever is enabled for you. So, basic account setup and order requirements. When you're shipping international orders through techSHIP, you have basically two pillars that you need to consider or take into account. And if any of these is not there, you will not be able to ship internationally. Okay. First of all, is the SKU information. This is a critical part of it because even if you have all the configurations set up at the client and billing account level, if your orders are missing SKU information, the carriers will not take your orders, will not process your order because you might be missing relevant information for customs declarations and a couple more things, okay? So you have to make sure that the SKU information is properly provided and generated at the order level, right? Other than the package itself, that you detail several elements on the SKU data. We're going to review that in a live in an environment. And then other elements that could be or might be relevant is how you define and configure duties and customs, how you're going to declare or state that you're shipping the orders to the carrier in this sense. This might require more or less effort depending on the case. And the options that you choose. For example, for DDP, you might need to provide additional information that for DDU you wouldn't. And for customs as well, depending on what you're shipping and how, this might require an additional effort depending on the case. It's also important to set up your printers properly as well, regardless of the application you use at the warehouse. If you're using the TechSHIP web client with the print client, or if you're using the TechSHIP desktop client at the packet lines. Typically because depending on the way you choose to print and generate things, if you're going to go paper or paperless, okay, is what documents and how these are going to be printed. Typically, everything that is a shipping label will be coming out the thermal printer, but most of the time, the customs invoices and a couple more things are targeted to a laser printer. Obviously because of the size of the paper and all the information contained in it. So we're going to see how your printer setup would look like in a scenario where you would print the shipping labels and additional labels for international shipping through the thermal printer and customs invoices through laser printer. And then, obviously, depending on the case, you might be required to set up additional elements, depending on the case of you printing paper documents or electronic trade documents being generated and handled by the carrier. Okay, so this is going to be our foundation for today's webinar. As for duties and customs presets, the only thing that we're going to mention so far is that these are set up at a client and billing account level. Okay, so you could have several clients within your TechShip portal, and for some of them have a specific setup for duties and customs, and for others you might have a different one. Maybe for one of your clients you're paying for duties, you have X, Y, and Z customs information, and maybe for another client you do not pay for duties and you have a different customs information, and maybe for another client you're just shipping domestic orders and all this information and all these settings are going to be disabled. Okay, so what's really important to understand is that there's not a global place in the portal, in the TechShip portal, to set up this information. This has to be set up under a client, and under that client, under each billing account that applies to the case. What kind of options do we have under these two categories, duties and customs? Under duties, depending on the carrier, you typically have duties paid and unpaid, DDP, DDU. But you might have additional options. So we're going to deal with the generic options here, or the transversal options across carriers. But if you do have carriers that provide you more options than DDP, DDU, feel free to reach our knowledge base and our documentation on how to ship international orders over that specific carrier if you have additional options there. Okay. As for export and custom settings, I'm going to show you how you can set up the type of goods you're shipping, how you can declare those, how that information is going to look in the documentation generated, either ETDs or printed documentation. So you can declare what you're shipping and how, and getting everything fair and square out of the box as you start shipping and printing. Okay. Then as for paper documents or ETDs, okay, these two are valid. And at the end, they end up generating the same information at the end of the line, right? The only difference over here is the output and how visible it is for us when we are processing the orders. When you process orders and go through the path of printing all this paper documentation for international orders, you're going to get additional labels, additional documents out of your printers, right? And you can, these are tangible. You can actually see what was generated, how it was generated, and if you're missing anything or you need to correct anything, you'll have it at hand. Now, if you choose the path of ETDs, electronic trade documents, in that case, the one generating that information will always be the carrier. Those documents will always be the carrier, and the base for that generation will be your information. When you send the request to process the order, when you hit the process and print button, you are telling the carrier, I want to ship all these items with all this information from this origin to this destination, and then the carrier will say, oh, okay, for this context, origin, destination, packaging, the SKUs within those packages, etc., and combined with what you're telling me that these are samples, for example, and do not have commercial value, then I'm going to generate all this information on my side, and it's not going to be visible to you. So when you're using ETDs, you rely on the carrier to generate all this information and handle it on their end. So for ETDs, it has its obvious advantages, okay, on savings, of course, on paper and power and a whole bunch of other things, but also it provides you with the capability of being integrated with the processes that the carrier has on their end. What really matters when you're doing ETDs is that you're sure that the information and the setup that you have on TechSHIP's end is the correct one. So when all the documentation is generated on the carrier side, nothing is missed. Okay, we're going to be reviewing how to do this later as well. And then customs invoices. Okay, these are you can choose to not print customs invoices, to print a default customs invoice, or if required, you can ask our team to design customs invoices customized for you. So regardless of the case and the path you take over here, I'm going to show you how these are handled and where are these controls when you're setting up your TechSHIP environment. So having presented all the topics that we're going to work with today, let's jump into action. Let's do it. Okay. So let's review the order that I have here on screen. This order is an international order. It's going out from a warehouse in Canada. And if we take a look at the order information here, this is going to an address at Middleburg, Florida. Okay, so it's going from Canada to the US. We have our regular information here. Okay, we have our batch number, we have our references, pick order number, custom order number, we have the address. When we go to the packaging section, we see that we have a medium box, dimensions 24 by 12 by 12, weighing 8 pounds, and we have SKU information. Okay, so this is a critical thing for you to properly process international orders. Depending on the carrier and depending on the origin and destination, you might be required to fill out all these fields or most of these fields, okay? In this case, I have a SKU code, okay? This is useful for us within the warehouse. A description of the items, okay? In this case, game part replacement, card game as well. There's not only one, there's a few of them, and each one of them has a different country of origin. The replacement parts are from China, and the card games are manufactured in the US. And we also have the unit price. So for example, for customs purposes, it's required that you have this information. So if there are any regulations in place from the country of origin to the country of destination, customs officers can know and the systems can know where these items are coming from, and also calculate the value of the shipment because you have the quantity and the unit price, and multiplying and adding all this will end up in how much the shipment is valued. Okay, for whichever reason. Could be insurance, could be customs regulations, taxes, etc., etc. Also, in this case, we have not included it. It would not be required in this particular case, an HTS code. Okay, these codes allow to pre-classify the nature of the items being shipped, and also, of course, put them under the magnifying glass and say if any of these are regulated or not, and if requirements or additional requirements or documentation is needed. Okay, but this is what we have at hand to ship. Okay, one box, 5 items, some coming from China, some coming from the US, and the added value is under $100. That's in broad terms what we are trying to ship from Canada to from Ontario in particular, the province, to the state of Florida in the US. Okay, with this information, let me refresh over here. What we have on the client side is this is our client, Gold Enterprises. We have 2 accounts through which we can process these orders for international shipping. We have this one for domestic shipping, which we're not going to use. And then we have these 2. FedEx International paper documents. This is going to print all the paper documentation. And then we have ETDs, okay, which this one is configured for electronic trade documents. What we are going to do now is that we're going to process this order under one account. We're going to make an export of the documents generated, and then we're going to do the same with the ETDs one. We're going to compare one result with the other, and then we're going to see how these accounts are configured at the client level. Okay, so let's get started. Let's go with paper documents first. I'm going to save this over here so it hits the right account. And right now, what I'm going to do is process. Okay, we're not going to process and print because obviously it wouldn't make sense for me to have output in my printer physically right now. Let's give it a moment so it reaches FedEx. We get the label back. The service that we're using is International Economy. Okay, something plain and simple, nothing fancy. Let's give it a while. Oh, just a second. The API might be causing issues right now. International Economy, paper documents. Let's try again. Let's give it a moment to try again. If it doesn't work here, we'll go with the ETDs first and see if we can get it processed. Okay, let's see. Just a second. Sometimes the test APIs are down, so we'll have to be patient with FedEx in this one. Yeah. Okay, just a second. Well, in the meantime, let's review the account setup, okay, for ETDs and paper documents. An easy way to do this, if you're within your own environment, is to choose the account here and press View. What this is going to do is jump straight to the client for which this account has been imported for, and automatically open that billing account profile, okay? So over here, the way this one is set up, the paper documents one, is the following. You'll see that we are using one reference number, which is the pick order number. I am including packing slips. This is going to be useful for international shipping as well. Okay. And here below, I have this option to print the commercial invoice. Okay. It has a quick note under here that says disabling paper CI is not possible for some carriers. And some carriers do not allow you to not print a commercial invoice. Okay. The commercial invoice will be generated with information that is part of the order, and also with information that is provided from this billing account setup, as I'm going to show you in a minute. The options that you have over here are these 3. By default, whenever you create a profile, it's going to have enable. So that means that for every order being processed, which applies to the case, a commercial invoice will be generated and printed. Disables this, so no commercial invoices are generated from techSHIP's end. And then auto lets the system decide whenever it's applicable or not. Okay. Within carrier options, we'll have our regular setup for domestic shipping. We're going to have a sender name, contact phone, contact email, uh, payment type, where we have sender. In this case, this is prepaid for the shipping cost. Okay, not duties. That's a whole different story. And then we have payer account here. So we have the account number, we have the payer country, everything is in place. This information is required for domestic shipping and is also required for international shipping. Okay. Now, when we're talking about specific international shipping information for FedEx, which is the case we're analyzing right now, we do have a separate section here for duties and customs. Okay, so for duties, and let's talk a little bit about this for a moment. You'll see that over here, when you set up an account from scratch, this is going to be configured to not set. Okay, these are all the billing options that you can use to state who's going to pay for duties. Okay, you might be tempted, if the duties are going to be paid by the consignee, to use recipient over here. But when you choose recipient, what you're actually telling FedEx is that someone with a FedEx account will be paying for duties on the shipment. Okay, and this is the case, typically the case of a broker, and not an actual consignee. A John Doe or a Jane Doe sitting at home at the living room waiting for the stuff to arrive. They don't have a FedEx account. They don't have a UPS account. They don't have an idea on how to use or create or have a UPS account or a FedEx account. So in that case, if you want the consignee to pay for duties, what you do is set it up to not set. Okay, that's a way to do DDU under FedEx. You need to set it to not set. When you set it to not set, then FedEx will say, oh, okay, no one is going to pay for duties. So the consignee will be in charge of doing so. Okay. If you do it that way, if you choose not set, you don't have to fill anything in this section. Now, in this case, this is configured for DDP, and the one paying you for duties is us at the warehouse. So in that case, just as we define that we're going to be paying for the shipping as senders, we define that we're going to be paying for for duties as senders as well. You need to provide your account number, and you'll need to provide the payer country as well. Okay. For any of the other options, you do need to fill out this information. Not set, just goes with the consignee. Depending on the carrier, there might be slight differences on how this is used and how this is called. In some cases, it could be not set. In some cases, you could have an explicit option that says consignee, okay? But typically, not set means that the consignee will pay for it. As for customs, and as you can see, we have an export purpose over here where we can choose from a list how we're going to declare the export purpose for the items we're shipping. Typically, it is sold, but depending on the case, you might need to choose another option. Repair and return, sample, gift, etc., etc. The information that you apply over here is going to be used for every order. And for custom purposes, you need to define what's the purpose of the shipment. If this is going to be for the final consumer or for a business, because regulations might apply differently depending on the case, origin and destination. Okay. Same with additional things as a B13A if you're shipping from Canada to the US, Canada. Okay. If it's required, you can state how you're going to do it, set the permit number, and these elements will be generated as well with the shipment. Okay. So in general, this already covers everything that has to do with a paper solution for international shipping via FedEx. You complete the basic information for domestic, all this info. Then over here in duties and customs, you define how you're going to handle it, and then you save, and you're good to go. Let's give it a shot now and see if it works. Okay, let's see if FedEx API is Isn't causing issues right now. Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so we got our shipment processed through the paper documents account, the one that we were just using. Let's see the result. What documentation was generated under this? Let's take a look at the labels. We're going to leave them here as a sample so we can compare it to the ETD's case. Okay, so if we take a look at this, for this shipment with one box, 4 labels were generated as part of the set. First of all, we have this one, which is a shipping label, okay, the regular shipping label. We have our typical elements, ship from, ship to, dimensions, who's going to pay for it, bill sender, okay. We have references over here. We have our reference with the pick order number there, FX1001. We also have the service, FedEx Express. Obviously, this is hidden in the test API, so we'll have sample over the barcode. But there are a few more elements which are relevant to the international shipping. Let me highlight those. Over here, it says international today. It has the airport of destination and the zip code as well for that one. Okay, so we know international today, 5 p.m. going to the Jacksonville airport. Besides of the shipping label, we also have 2 more documents here, okay? A two-way document, which is the airway bill. Let me zoom in a little bit more so it's more comfortable for you to read. On this particular label, which is only generated for international shipments that do print paper documents, you'll have the ship from, the ship to, the service, who's going to pay for the shipment, okay, weights and dimensions here as well, contact phone number. You have airway bill here, and then you have the type of packaging you're using, the type of form that is being handled. You also have international today, 5 p.m. But as you can see, there's information on the SKUs here as well. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Just a moment. So here, what we have is the reference, the pick order number in this case, and we have a description of the items within the order. In this case, we have, as we saw in the packaging section, totem, gate part replacement. Doesn't say the amount of these, okay? Just states the item, and then the other item, the card game, Gates of Atlantis. All right, doesn't state the amount as well. But even though it doesn't state the amount of the items that are being included or being shipped, what it does have is the customs value. This is adding the amount of SKUs by the declared value of these, okay? And for many purposes, this information is really important. As you can see over here, country of origin, you have China and US. It's well, the signature is here, test FedEx, all right, based on the billing account settings that we did. And well, obviously, all the legal information over here for the label. As it says over here, FedEx Airway bill copy, please place in pouch. And then we have another one, okay? We have both. And below, we have our packing slip. This is our packing slip, not related to the carrier at all, but we have this information, okay? This could be within the box, could be taped outside. You could have more than one copy if you need. So it's really up to how you want to handle it, okay? But in this case, we chose to generate a packing slip as well. This is going to be the output of the thermal printer, okay? But this is not the only thing that was generated for the shipment. If we go to download combined, okay, I'm just setting all these separately, okay, so we can have a quick look at those. If you actually print this batch, it's going to be seamless for you into how everything gets printed, okay? It's not like you have to jump from one end to another to do all this. This was the commercial invoice generated for the shipment. As you can see, it only has one page. All right, it has a section for the exporter, the consignee, the importer, if any, okay, or if different from the consignee. And you will see that everything is filled out. Over here, you have a box checked, information completed, in all the fields. Okay, not related. Over here it says duties pay and taxes payable by exporter, because we configured it for DDP, as I showed you before. And over here we do have information about the contents of the package down to detail. Okay, it has 3 units of this game replacement part, 2 units of this card game, and then you have country of origin for each, the unit value, the total value, and the subtotal for those. In this case, we haven't chose to add insurance, so it doesn't have it there, and no additional costs. But as you can see, everything has been properly completed and filled out. It has even been signed over here, based on your billing account information. So the output for this would be this these 4 labels out of your thermal printer, and this commercial invoice, sorry, out of your laser printer. Okay, let's quickly jump, and I'm going to take the desktop client as an example for this. Okay, in the settings section under printer, okay, this is where you set up your printer output. So under thermal printer, you should choose the thermal printer you want to print the labels from. And then under generic printer, you choose a laser printer. So the commercial invoices can be printed through that as well in one shot as you process the order. So regardless of how many labels the order generates, depending on the origin destination, if it's CTDs, if it's not, if it's a domestic shipment, having those outputs configured that way will have you not worrying about what is and what's not part of the order. You just processed, in this case, got 4 labels out of the thermal printer, 1 out of the laser one, get everything stuck at the box and included in the box as it applies to the case, and you're good to go, and you can process the next order without thinking about what it might be, where it should go to, what kind of documentation you would have to generate or you would have to complete manually if it would be the case for that specific shipment. Okay. All right, let's leave this like this for the moment. So we have a comparison point with a paper printing scenario and with an ETD scenario. Okay, what we're going to do right now is void this order, and I'm going to use the electronic trade documents account. Okay, this billing account is a clone of the paper one with slight differences on how the paper trail is being handled. Let's give it a moment to load so we can see what these differences are. Good. So in this particular case, in this section, everything is the same. We are going to print a commercial invoice. We're going to generate a packing slip, and then we're going to pass the pick order number as the reference. Okay. Now over here, we have payment type, duties, everything exactly the same as the other account. But the main difference here is that we chose to generate electronic trade documents. Okay. And when we check this box, we're telling FedEx in this particular case, I don't want to get all the labels you gave me whenever I have to print all the physical labels, just as we did. I don't want all that. I just want to send all the information to you, and you handle it on your end. You generate all the electronic trade document information that's required. So what I expect from your end is just a shipping label, and that's it. Okay. When you migrate from paper trail to ETDs, it's quite understandable to be a little bit dubious or a little bit afraid that the proper documentation is being generated and things are being handled the right way. But there's a way to know if FedEx has understood that your shipment has to be handled as an electronic trade document shipment. And I'm going to be showing you how. The first step is checking this box. And electronic trade documents require you to sign the documents with a digital signature. Okay. So when you enable this when you check this option, you should also check enable ETD images down here. When you do so, you're going to have two different fields that are going to show letterhead image ID and electronic signature image ID. These will allow you to choose from a dropdown from a set of 5 images. Okay, I'm going to show you where you can load these images for proper generation. But so far, this is the only difference that you'll have when you move from a paper trail scenario to a paperless scenario. You need to check this, you need to check this and complete these fields, and that's it. Okay, now let me show you how this order will look like when you process it as an electronic trade documents shipment. Let's give it a moment to reach FedEx and get things back. Okay, just a second. Or we're having issues with the API as well. Let's try for a couple more times. If it doesn't work right now, we'll check the images in the meantime. Okay, sometimes test APIs can be unresponsive. Okay, let's be a little bit patient and okay, just a moment. Let me add. As you can see over here, in this case, for example, it's requesting me that the harmonized code is missing for commodity 1, so estimated taxes and duties were not returned, and for 2 as well. It's telling me, hey, take a minute and review your SKU information, because what you're passing to me, for me to generate the ETDs is not enough, okay? So in this case, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna type whichever number, okay? I'm just gonna send a bunch of zeros and save. Let's see if it takes it, all right? If it doesn't, we're gonna be providing with more information. But the good news is that, oh, sorry, I, international economy. The good news is that if there's anything off, typically FedEx is going to show you an error message. It's going to tell you, hey, stop there for a while. You're missing this, you're missing that. I need this information from you. Okay. Okay. Let's try a couple more times, and we're just unlucky to be hitting FedEx at a moment where the API is not properly working. Well, might change the service code as well if this is being part of the issue. Let me see. Let me see if it can go with international ground, calling a different service. Yeah, it's not liking it. Okay, in the meantime, okay, let's be a little bit patient with the FedEx API. The place where you can set up these images for the signatures is under plugins, okay? In this section, you'll find that you have FedEx upload image, okay? Under this FedEx upload image, what you can do is this. You can state for which account you're doing it. For example, in this case, this one, Test FedEx International. Then you choose the image slot that you're going to use, and then you upload the image, okay? If you need to know any specifics on the file format, the size, you can reach FedEx so they can provide that information. Off the top of my head, if I remember correctly, it has to be a PNG file, and the size can be over 50 pixels of height, and I can't remember the length of the top of my head. But once you have saved these, right, you define it, you upload the image, then you can target these from this section and say, oh, okay, I want this and I want that in this particular case, okay? Let's see if we're lucky for a moment, just a second. Let me do service code from here, international economy, and also FedEx ETD, that's right. Yeah, FedEx is causing issues on this. Well, just to, I'm sorry for this inconvenience, but let me state it this way. When an ETD's order is processed, the output is a little bit different. In this case, the only things that we would have is the shipping label that we have here on screen. There's going to be a few differences in this section, because in this section you'll see ETD. And that's the way you can know that FedEx recognized that you requested and that the electronic trade documents were generated by FedEx. Okay, so that's going to be your green light on, oh, everything is fine. FedEx liked what I sent, nothing is missing, and that they're telling me that the electronic trade documents were generated as part of the label. That's a code for you to know that everything went fine in that sense. And these two labels will not exist because these would be handled digitally as part of the electronic trade documents. And then you do have your packing slip, because this is a document unrelated to the carrier. It's specific for the warehouse, and it's something that you requested to add as part of the billing account. As for the commercial invoice, it will be generated exactly as it was, uh, through techSHIP, okay? Because this is part of the general options section. If you wanted to disable this, okay, and handle it somehow else, you can click disable here and handle it that way, okay? I'm just gonna give it one last try because we're gonna run out of time. But well, that's the only difference from a practical standpoint when it comes to processing the orders this way. Yeah, I'm sorry. Well, what else should we take into account over here? In this case, we saw FedEx, okay? As for the topics that we were to discuss, we covered all of these, okay? Because we handled duties and customs, the printer setup, paper documents, DDP and DDU, export and customs, okay? And paper trail or ETDs. Now, one more thing here is the customs invoice format, okay? The format that you see over here is the default one, okay? And if for any reason you need a specific one, okay, as you can see, this has a version to it. If you need a specific one with additional elements or anything related to any specific needs you might have, including information which is not by default, including logos if that's required as well, anything related to customization, you can request it to our team. And in that case, instead of just setting this control as enabled, what you're going to do is check this box, enable custom CI, okay? From this section, there are two more things you can set up out of the box to the regular one. You can choose the CI reason for export. For example, in this case, could be commercial, let's say. And also the currency. I could say, okay, this is in USD. Since we're pushing this information to the since we're shipping to the US, let's say that the items have their value not in Canadian dollars, but US dollars, okay? So you can customize, use the model and customize your commercial invoice this way as well. Now, during this session, we only reviewed FedEx. Nevertheless, depending on the carrier, this might be a little bit different. Let's review two of the most used carriers for international shipping. UPS, okay? UPS is a little bit different. You will not have a section for duties and customs in this section. The way it works for UPS is that you'll have your regular information here, shipper account, okay? Which for domestic is enough. And you'll see a duties section here, duties paid by. If it says default, as I mentioned before, or not set, this means that this is DDU. The consignee will have to pay for duties, okay? But if you're going to pay for duties, you can choose a different option, receiver, sender, or a third party. if you choose any of these, you'll have to state which account is going to pay for this. Typically, in this case, if I would pay for it as a warehouse, I'm going to set my UPS account number there. And this will turn my setup into a DDU setup just with a couple of clicks. Okay. A couple more things which are relevant when it comes to exports declarations is that over here, UPS does have a section for export. Okay. Um, the interesting fact about this is that, for example, FedEx requires you to state that you want electronic trade documents. In this case, UPS already does it by default. And if you need to prevent the documents to be generated, you can do so by doing skip trade documents here. Okay. If you click there, it's going to hide everything there, and you're going to be liable and go through the work of generating all the exports information through another system on your own, manually or automatically, depending on what you have on the other side. But if you're going to be handling that by through TechSHIP, UPS assumes that you're going to handle things electronically and would require you to fill out this information here. The reason for export, for example, commercial, right? Shipper tax number, whichever that number is, 12345 6, for example, here. Currency codes for export. I'm exporting in Canadian dollars. The terms for sale, in this case, I'm gonna say this is DD. What did we set up over there? Okay, let's do DDU. Okay, so we'll have to say this is DDU. As you can see, you have more options here in this case. So again, depending on the carrier, you might have additional options here. And then you can add additional comments or a declaration statement. So for each uh, ordered order being handled and each document generated here, this is being included there. Okay. Whichever legal statement or legal element you might need to complete over here, you can do so. And let's review the last carrier here. If we're talking about FedEx, DHL, okay, just a moment. Let me go to the DHL one here, DHL Express. There we go. DHL Express is a little bit different. As you can see, you have your regular information in this section. You have a couple of things that make a couple of options that make things easier. For example, you can check if the shipments are dutiable or not through this account. And you can also ask the system to calculate the insured value based on the SKU information. You can also check a couple of things for duties and taxes prepaid. So it's just a statement and that's it. Just checking a box, no other things to fill out. You can define the terms of trade, DIP, DDP, DDU. And over here, you can choose different templates for commercial invoices provided by DHL. You can choose to print the waybill or the waybill or not. You can also choose if you're going to go paperless or paper paper trail for this as well. So again, depending on the carrier, it might be a little bit different. Okay. If you have any doubts into how to set this up for your specific needs, you can always go to the Need a Hand Assistant, and you can type something simple like DHL international shipping, something that gives the knowledge base a hint that that's specifically what you're looking for. So over here, if you click in this section, this is going to guide you. Oh, okay, this is what this is how you access this section. And this is what it means. Okay, this section means this section means that, this field means this and that. For example, in this case, if you're shipping, we're handling a Canada to US scenario, but if you're shipping to the European Union, you might be required to fill out more information, duty account number, the shipper EORI number, or the IOSS, depending on the case, the tax number as well. So depending on the carriers that you're going to use is how you're going to take this path. But the important thing here is that at the end, you're sure that the information that you provide at the billing account level is correct, and the information that you provide at the order level is correct. So at the end, the proper information and the proper documentation gets handled and generated respectively. And the only thing you need to worry about at the packing line or at an office printing batches is just hitting the process and print button and getting the labels out. Okay. Good. So with this, we cover international shipping 101. I hope this has been helpful for you and your team. This webinar has been recorded and is going to be uploaded within our channels. We strongly suggest you subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have a playlist specifically dedicated for our webinars, which you can review at some other point in time if you're just attending this session for information purposes, or just to follow on a setup if you're going to if you're already working with this and tweaking a couple of things on your actual TechSHIP environment. So again, thank you for taking the time to join us today, and I'll be seeing you on our next webinar. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.